Hello friends! Today we are gonna create a full stack chat application using React and Firebase. To see this chat page, we have to be logged in first. If I log out, it will show the login component. We can create a new account or login. And now I can see all my chats on the left side. I can search for any existing chat or add a new user. When I select any item here, it's gonna fetch all the chat details and the messages, and this chat is real-time. When I send any message, the other user will get that immediately. And also when we receive a new message, we'll see that on the chat list. Its background is different because we didn't read that, but when I open it, it will update the chat and change the background. I can also send any image. If I block this user, I won't be able to send a new message anymore, and that user cannot send a message or see our username and profile picture. It's a great project to understand React and Firebase basics. You'll learn Firebase Authentication to create users, Firebase storage to upload images, and Firestore database to fetch and send real-time data. And after creating our application, we'll deploy it using Hostinger. As you know, it's the hosting sponsor of the channel, and I create different projects using Hostinger every month. And for this project, I'm gonna choose a VPS hosting. If you choose the most popular VPS, you'll get really generous RAM and storage. That means you can deploy all your full stack projects on a single server. And these servers are super fast because they use NVMe SSDs and one of the most powerful processors. If you wanna get a discount, you can use the link in the description, choose your time period, and apply the Lama Dev coupon code here. After purchasing, you are ready to set up your server. You can choose any location, and here you can select any operating system and the control panel. There are many free and paid options, and you can install any of them with just one click. I prefer using Cloud Panel because it's free and really easy to use. We can set a password for the panel and for the VPS. And now we can finish the setup. It's gonna take a while. Right after that, it will be ready to deploy our applications. So if you are ready, let's create our app and deploy it to this server. Okay, if you created a new folder, you are ready to install your React application. To do that, we are gonna be using my GitHub repository. You can find the link in the description below. And as you can see, we have a starter branch here. This branch includes everything we need to start our React application. In the public folder, as you can see, we have all the images. We have ESLint configuration, and inside the source folder, we have an app.js, and inside, as you can see, we don't have anything. So we are gonna build everything from scratch. And at the end of the video, I'm gonna add here one more folder, and it's gonna be the completed version of the project. But for the beginning, we are gonna need this branch. By the way, it's gonna be an open source project. You can use it anywhere you want. So I would appreciate if you could give a star for this project. And after that, let's download this branch. To do that, you can come here and copy this URL and clone this project to your VS Code. But also, you might want to fork this project. So if you create your own repository, it will be easier to keep track of your progress. So I'm gonna click here. As you can see, this is my test account. I will fork. And if you do that, it's gonna create a new repo on your account. And right now you can clone this project. Just copy this URL. I can use my main account. I will come here and copy. And on my terminal, I will say git clone. I will paste my URL, and I want to clone everything in this folder. So I will say dot and enter. As you can see, our files are here, but we don't have our libraries. Let's install. I will say npm install. And they are here. So right now we can start our application. To do that, I will say npm run and dev. Let's open up our app. And our text is here. Before starting, let me show you the main structure of our application. Firstly, we are going to design our React application. And after that, we will need a backend to save our users, chats, and images. To do that, we are going to be using Google Firebase. But there are tons of different Firebase services. Which ones we are going to use? We are going to use Firebase Authentication. We are going to use Firestore database. And we are going to use Firebase storage. When we want to create a new user or sign in, we are going to be using Firebase Authentication. Let's say login and register. After creating the user, we should store the user information and the chat information so we can see our chats, we can send a new message. So we are going to need this database. Let's say store user details, chats, and messages. And also we will be able to upload our images. So we will upload these files using Firebase storage. Upload avatar and chat image. And after uploading, it's going to return us the image URL and we can store them in our database. So inside user details, we are going to be using the user avatar, and inside the chat collection, we are going to be using the image URL. And here, when we create a new user, it's going to return us a user ID, and using this user ID, we can store our user details like username, user image, user chats, and other details. So all these services will be connected. What about our database? Let me add here our database structure. Firstly, we will have the users collection, and each user will have the unique ID, username, email, avatar URL, and the blocked array. We will store here the ID of blocked users. And we will have the chats collection. Each chat will have the created at date and the messages array. You might think creating a messages collection and giving chat IDs for each message instead of creating this array. But remember, Firestore doesn't use a relational database. Searching all messages by using the chat ID might be expensive. Of course, for our application, the free tier of Firebase is more than enough, but if you have larger applications, you should design your database according to your needs. And we are going to create one more collection, and it's going to be user chats. When we visit our application, we will get all the user chats on the left sidebar. So we can fetch all these chats using this ID. So it's going to be exactly the same ID that our user has. So I'll say user's ID will be userchats.id. And inside user chats, we will have multiple chats. Let me make this bigger. And let me show you what we are going to have inside this chat object. We are going to have the chat ID, receiver ID, the last message, updated at, and is seen fields. When someone sends us a message, it's going to be false. When we open our chat, it's going to be true. And what about this message object? Inside a single message, we are going to have the sender ID, text, we'll be able to send any image, and we are going to have the created at date. So this is the main structure of our backend. Right now, we are ready to design our application. Firstly, I'm going to give a background for my entire application. To do that, I'm going to open up the source folder and find index.css. And for the body, I'm going to give a background image. And I'm going to find my image here. Let's see. As you can see, our background is here. We are going to use it. Just like that. You can use any image you want. And after that, I'm going to center everything in this body, because in our application, we are going to create here a container and it's going to be on the middle of the body. To do that, we can use flexbox, align item center, it's going to center vertically, and justify content center. And it's going to center our item horizontally. Okay, we can't see our item. Let's give a class name. I'm going to find my app.js and its class name will be container. I'm going to give some space, so it's not going to be 100%, 100 VW, and height will be 90 VH. Let's give a background and we can see better. Okay, as you can see, it's not centered vertically. That's because the size of our body is not 100 VH. You might ask why this background is 100% if the body is not. If you don't know the answer, you can visit my second CSS video. In that video, I explained everything you need to know about this selector, HTML element and body element. You can find it on the card and after come back here and continue. So let's say 100 VH and perfect. I'm gonna change my text color and let's give here some border radius, just like that. And right now I'm gonna change my background color. But I'm not just gonna use a background color, we are gonna also use a backdrop filter and we are gonna give a gloss effect. Let's see how to do that. Firstly, I'm gonna change this background color. It's gonna be a blue color, just like that. As you can see, it's a dark blue and I just reduced its opacity a little bit. Let's see. Just like that. And also, I'm gonna give a backdrop filter. I'm gonna give some blur effect and saturate effect. Let's see right now, and it looks much better. But can we use it for every browser? Let's check. I'm gonna visit caniuse.com and let's search for backdrop filter. As you can see, most of the modern browsers are supporting, so we can use it without any problem. And let's give a border here. I'm gonna use white color and again, I'm gonna reduce its opacity. As you can see, it's the white color, but the opacity is 12%. Okay. Right now, I'm going to separate my container into two pieces. We are going to have the left bar that we can search for users and our chats. On the middle, we are going to have our chat component that we can receive messages and send a message. And on the right side, we are going to have the detail component. So we can see the user detail and the chat detail. So let's do that. I'm going to come here. Let's close here. And we are going to have three components. Let's create them. Components. The first one will be list, chat, and detail. Let's create our JSX files. and CSS files. Just like that. Let's create our functions and use them inside our app.js. I'm going to be using my shortcut. If you don't know how I'm doing this, you can visit my GitHub repository again. Just find this repository and visit this JSON file. And inside you are going to see my shortcut snippets. And you can copy them and paste inside your snippets. Just find here your extension. In our case is going to be JavaScript React.js, and you can paste here your snippet. Okay, so I'm going to save and create the others. And also I'm going to add here my CSS files. In this project, we are using a plain CSS. If you want to, you can use any UI library or framework, but in our application, we have just one page, so there will be nothing complex. And also, we are going to use nested CSS, so we don't have to create a class name for each element. When we start, you are going to understand better. Let me write here. List CSS and chat. So I'm gonna come here and write my components. First one will be list, chat, and detail. Let's import them quickly. Just like that. So let's see on the browser. Okay, our items are here, but I want to make them horizontal, so we can do this easily using Flexbox. I'm gonna find my container, and I will just say display flex. They are horizontal. Let's give a size using Flexbox. For the chat component, I'll say flex 2. Let's give our class name, by the way. And for detail, it's gonna be flex 1. I can do the same thing for the list. Flex 1. So they are gonna be smaller. Just like that. As you can see, chat is much bigger, and this is what we want. And let's create our elements for the list component. Firstly, we are going to have here our user information. We will show our image and username and some icons. To do that, I will create here a new component, and let's say user info. JSX. Let's import our CSS. And after that information, we are going to have our chat list. So I'm going to create one more component. Just like that. So let's use them inside our list. The first one will be user info, and the second one will be chat list. Just like that. So let's create our user information on the left side, and for the right side, we are going to add some icons. I'm going to come here and let's say user, and one more, and it's gonna be icons. The first one will be more.png, two more, video, and edit.png. And for the user container, we are going to have our user image. Of course, we don't have any data yet, so we can use our avatar PNG for now. And after, I'm going to create h2 tag, and it's going to be our username. Let's say John Doe for now. Okay, let's give a style. Firstly, I'm going to give here a padding, and I'm going to make my items horizontal. Let's say 20 pixels. Display flags, and I'm going to center them vertically and separate my items using justify content. Okay, this image is too big. Let's give a style. And also I'm going to move this username here, so they are going to be horizontal again. So let's use our user container, display flags, align item center, and gap between our image and username will be 20 pixels. Let's give a style for the image, 50 pixels. It's gonna be a circle, so I will say 50% border radius, and object width will be cover. Okay, perfect. What about those icons? Again, I'm gonna give a gap between them and reduce their sizes. After this user, I'll say icons, gap between them 20 pixels, and I'm gonna choose my icons, and they are gonna be 20. Just like that. And we can click on them. Perfect. And what about our chat list? Firstly, I'm gonna create here a search component, and on the left side, we are gonna have our search bar. On the right side, we are going to have add new user button, and after that, we can show here each individual chat. And they are going to have a user avatar, the username, and the latest message. I'm going to close everything here, open up my chat list, and inside, let's create our first container. And it's going to be search. Let's say search bar. And inside this bar, we are going to have our image, search image, and the search input. I can give some placeholder, and I will say search. And finally, after this search bar, we are going to have a button, and we are going to be using plus.png. So when we click on this button, we will be able to add new user. Let's give a style. I'm gonna make them horizontal as we always do. I'm gonna open up my CSS here. For the search container, let's say align item center, gap between items will be 20, and padding will be 20. But I want to make this search bar a little bit bigger. Our button will be at the end of the container, and the rest of the container will be our search bar. To do that, we can use flex again, search bar, and I will say flex 1. Just like that. Let's give a background color. Again, I'm going to be using my dark blue color. Let's give a semicolon here. And I will paste my color here. As you can see, the opacity is 50%. Okay, perfect. Let's center our items. And I'm gonna give border radius. Okay. Let's get rid of this input background and this border. Input, and the background color will be transparent. I'm gonna delete the border, outline, and the text color will be white. Perfect. But as you can see, if I click here, it's not choosing my input because it ends somewhere here. Again, I can use flags. Just like that. Perfect. Let's reduce this image size. It's going to be 20 pixels. After this input, I can give here some padding. And it's much better right now. So what about this image? Let's give a class name here. And I will say add. And I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller. I'm gonna give exactly the same background color. Let's copy and paste. Let's give some padding and border radius. And we can click this. So I'm gonna give cursor pointer. Okay, but where is our padding? Oh, I set 0. It's gonna be 10 pixels. Okay, it's much better right now. And when I click on this button, I'm gonna change my icon and it's gonna be -png. To do that, I can create here a use state. I'll say add mode, set add mode. I'll say use state hook. And at the beginning, it's gonna be false. But as soon as I click on this button, it's gonna be true. And using that state, we can update our icon. So I'm gonna copy this and write my condition here. I will say if it's add mode, use -png. If not, +png. And whenever I click on this button, I'm gonna change my state. On click, set add mode. I'm gonna take the previous state and write here the opposite. So when it's false, when I click here, it's gonna be true. Let's see. I'm gonna click, as you can see, -png and plus. So right now I can add my chats. Let's close here. And after this search, I can start adding my chat items. Let's say item. And inside we are going to have the user image. For now, again, we are going to be using avatar PNG. After fetching data from the database, it's going to be dynamic. And after that, we are going to have the tags container. And it's going to include our username, let's say Jane Doe, and the latest message of that chat. Let's say hello for now. Okay, again, they are going to be horizontal, but before let me add some more items so we can see the space between those items. As you can see, it's overflowing. What I want to do is I want to give a scroll effect for this container. So if it overflows, we are not going to see them here. Instead, we will be able to scroll. Let's open up our CSS again. After this search, I'll say item. Let's center this, give gap between items, and I will give padding. And we can click on our items. And for each item, I can give border bottom so we can separate them. Border bottom, 1 pixel solid, and this gray color. Just like that. So I'm gonna get back to my container and give my scroll effect. So I will say flags1 again. So it's gonna contain all our container and overflow will be scroll. Okay, it's still overflowing because we used flags here, but our parent is not a flags box. And I will say display flags, but it's not gonna be horizontal. I'm gonna be using flag extraction and column. And right now I can scroll down. Okay, so let's reduce this image size and separate our texts. I'm gonna close here. inside item, I'm gonna find my image, and it's gonna be 50 pixels. It's gonna be a circle, and object width will be cover. And after this image, we have the text container. Again, I'm gonna be using flexbox, but they are gonna be vertical. And gap between our texts will be 10 pixels. And for the username, font weight will be a little bit thicker. And for the last message, it's gonna be smaller, and the font weight will be 300. Just like that. So let's give a border for this chat component. We are gonna have a border here on the left and on the right, and we are gonna be using exactly the same color. Let's remember this one. So I'm gonna open up my chat component, and I will say border left, border right, and perfect. So let's take care of our chat component. Firstly, we are going to have the user information here, and this container will include the user image, username, and again, on the right side, we are going to have some icons. And after this user information, we will be able to see our chat messages, and on the bottom, we are going to create an input that we can send our messages. So basically, we are going to have three main sections: top, center, and bottom. Let's do that. I can close them, open up my chat component, and I'm going to create my containers: top, center, and bottom. We are going to have the user information and the icons, and inside user information, again, the user image, and let's say texts, Jane Doe, and a p tag, and it's gonna be the user description. Let's write here something random, just like that. And inside icons, we are gonna have three icons. First one will be phone.png, video, and info. I'm gonna separate my items, give some padding here. Let's do that. I'm gonna open up chat CSS, and let's move it here. Make this a little bit bigger. And again, I'm gonna say height 100%, so it will be easier to separate our items. For the top, I'm gonna give some padding, make this horizontal, align item center, and justify content will be space between. And again, let's give this border bottom, just like that. What about this user? We are gonna do exactly the same thing. If you are using Flexbox, everything is much easier. 20 pixels, and for the image, let's make this a little bit bigger, 60 pixels. Again, a circle and object fit. We are using object fit because if you don't do that, it's not gonna crop your images. It's gonna try to fit inside this container, and it will look a little bit weird. If you want your images to be sharp, you have to use object fit. It can be cover or contain. And after this image, texts, let's say flex direction column, and the gap between username and this description will be 5 pixels. Let's increase this font size and font weight. 18 pixels, and font weight will be bold. And for the p tag, it's gonna be smaller, font weight will be thinner, and I'm gonna give a color, and it's gonna be a soft gray. Just like that. So let's separate our items here, icons. User ends here, so I will say icons. Gap between items will be 20, And for each icon inside, size will be 20. Okay, before creating the center component, let's take care of the bottom. It's gonna be much easier. We are gonna have icons on the left side. On the middle, we are gonna have our text input. Right next to that input, we are gonna have the emoji icon. And finally, a send button. I can close here for now. And let's say icons, text input, let's say placeholder, type a message. After, I'm gonna create my emoji container. Inside that, we are gonna have our icon. And after giving our style, we are gonna add here one more component, and it's gonna show our emojis. To do that, we are gonna need a library, but for now, let's give our style. So I'm gonna create my button, send, and let's give class name, send button. Okay. I forgot my icons. Again, we are gonna have 3 icons, image.png, camera, and microphone. Okay, let's separate them. I'm gonna open up my CSS file. After this top, I can create center and bottom. And inside this, I'm gonna give some padding and make this horizontal. And again, I'm gonna give my border. And it's gonna be border top. Okay, we cannot see it right now, but when we move our items here, it's gonna be visible. Before that, let's give size for our icons. Gap 20. And for each image, it's gonna be 20. Just like that. And what about this input? After icons, I'm gonna choose my input, flex 1. And again, I'm gonna delete the background color, transparent, border none, outline none, and the text color will be white. Of course, it's not a class name, just like that. Actually, I can give exactly the same background here instead of transparent. I'm gonna come here and change my background color. Just like that. And as you can see, it contains all our container, but there is no space here. Let's give. I will find the parent and I will say gap 20. Okay, I will give some padding here. It's too small. I can give border radius and font size will be 16 pixels. Just like that. And for this button, again, I will make this a little bit bigger, change background, remove the border. What was the class name? Send button. First, the background color will be this blue color. And the text color will be white. I'm gonna give some padding for top and bottom and for left and right. Let's delete the border. 5 pixels radius and we can click. Just like that. I want to decrease this icon also. It can be exactly the same size. So what we can do is move it here. So it's gonna be all the images inside our container. Just like that. So what I'm gonna do is install my emoji picker. So let's install. I'm gonna open up my terminal, create a new one, and I will say npm install emoji picker react. Okay, Right now we can use our picker component. I'm gonna close here for now, and I will say import emoji picker from emoji picker React. Let's use this component. After this image, I will say my component, and as you can see, it's here. But at the beginning, it shouldn't be here. Only when I click on my icon, it should be visible. To do that, we are gonna need a useState hook. Const open set open useState, let's say false, and using this variable, we can write our condition. To do that, we are going to be using the open method, and I will say open if it's true. Right now it's not here, so when I click on this button, I can update my state. So let's say on click, set open, take the previous state and write here the opposite. I will click and it's here. Of course, we are going to change its position, but for now, it can stay like that. And when I click on any emoji here, nothing is happening. What I want to do is add this emoji to my input. To do that, we are going to be using on emoji click event. Let's say handle emoji. Let's create our function here. And let's see what's inside this event. I'm gonna open my console. Let's choose any emoji. And as you can see, it returns the name of the emoji, image URL, but we are gonna need this emoji. So using this value, I can update my input here. But before, let's create another state that we can update our input. So I'm gonna create one more, and it's gonna be text, and at the beginning is going to be an empty string. And whenever we write anything in our input, we are going to update our state. To do that, we can use onChange event, set text, event target, and value. Let's see. I'm gonna write something, and as you can see, it updates my state. So when I click on any emoji here, again, I'm gonna update my state, and at the end of the text, we are gonna add this emoji. So I will come here and say set text, take the previous value and write it again, but also add this emoji. And after that, we can close our emoji container. We don't need this anymore. Just like that. Let's use this text here as a value. And let's see. I'm gonna refresh. Hi. I'm gonna choose emoji. And it's here. Perfect. Let's change its position. I want to see this component on the top right. I'm going to open my CSS. Let's see again. We have emoji, image, and this picker. Let's actually create here a container. And I'm going to change its position. After this input, we have the emoji container. And its position will be relative because for the picker, we are going to be using absolute. And I'm going to give my position here, let's say 50 pixels from the bottom. And the left will be 0. Oops, there's a typo here. And let's see. I'm going to refresh. When I click, as you can see, it's on the top right. Of course, it's overflowing, but it's not important because our component will be here on the bottom. To do that, I'm gonna give flex1 for the center, and after I'm gonna move my item to at the end of the container. To do that, let's open up center, Again, I'm gonna give padding and flex will be 1. And if I say margin top auto, it's gonna move my item, but as you can see, flex doesn't work because our parent is not a flex box. Display flex, flex direction, just like that. Right now when I click, as you can see, our picker is here. Okay, awesome. So what about center? Let me close here. And for each message, we are going to create a div. And that div will include the user image, user text, and the date of that message. And if we send any message to that user, we are going to see it on the right side, but this time we are not going to have any image. And again, if it overflows, we will be able to scroll just like here. Let's do that. I'm going to come here, close this chat. And inside center, I'm going to create my first message. Let's say message div. And it's going to include the image avatar.png. And after we are going to have our texts. The first one will be our message. Let's create here a random text. And after we are going to have our span that shows the date of that message. I will say 1 minute ago. So let's create other messages. And if we are the owner of that message, we are not going to have any image. And the class name will be message and own. Again, the other user's message, our message, other user's message, and our message. Okay, let's give here overflow. I will say scroll. I will give display flags. Flags direction will be column, and gap between each message will be 20. Let's create our message. And I will say maximum width 70%. And for image and text container, we are going to give a gap. So we can use flexbox. And just like that. As you can see, it's not 100%. When we add our own message here on the right side, it's going to look much better. Let's do that. I will say if it's message and also own, align self will be flex and. Just like that. And I can change this text color. Actually, inside own, I will choose texts and the p tag inside, and the background color will be this blue color. Just like that. We are going to give some padding inside, but before, let's take care of the alt text container because we have an image here. I will say image and texts. And for the image, I'm going to give width and height, as we always do, 50%, and object fit. And for the texts, I will give flex 1, and it's going to be vertical, and gap between items 5 pixels. Okay, right now we can give padding for our items, our p tags. Let's give 20. I'm going to give background color. If it's not our message, it's going to be this dark blue color. Just like that. And its opacity will be just 30%. And I will give border radius 10 pixels. And perfect. What about this date? It's going to be smaller. Just like that. What if a user sends an image? We are going to show it above this text. Let's add for this one. the latest one. Before this p tag, I'm gonna add an image. Let me copy and paste quickly. And as you can see, its size is small and it's a circle because we used image here. But for the image inside text container, I will say 100%, height will be 300. Let's give some border radius. And again, object width will be cover. Just like that. Okay, perfect. And what about detail? Again, we are going to create the user information, the detail of this receiver. And after that, we are going to add here some options that we can see the files of this chat or photos of this chat. And finally, we can add here a button that we can block this user. Let's do that. I can close them and open up detail. And again, a user container. And let's say info container. And inside this user, we are going to have the user image, username, Jane-Doe, and the user description. Again, I'm going to generate a text here. It's going to be shorter. And after this user, we can add here our options. Each option has a title, so we can show the title text on the left and the icon on the right. Firstly, I will say option, a title div, let's say chat settings, and the image, and it's going to be arrow up.png. Let's create some more. Privacy and help, shared photos, it's going to be arrow down because we are going to show our images here. So after this title, let's say photos, and inside this container, we are going to have our image, the image name, and on the right side, again, we are going to have an icon. So let's say photo item, and each item has an image. Let me copy and paste this image. And the photo name, let's say any random text here. And on the right side, we are going to have our icon. And it's going to be download.png. Okay, we are going to give style for our images, but before, let's add our last title, and it's going to be shared files. And after this option, we can create here a button that we can block the user. Okay, let's open up our CSS. Actually, I can add here more items. By the way, it should be like that. And to separate this icon and these items, I can create here one more div, and it's going to be photo detail. Okay, because we are going to be using justify content space between, and I want to separate those items and this icon. Okay, let me create some more items here. Okay, and let's take care of user div here. Firstly, let's give a padding. Display will be flex. Let's give semicolon here. And after that, flex direction column. I'm gonna center my items, and gap between each item will be 20 pixels. And after, I'm gonna give my border, remember, 1 pixel solid and this gray color. Just like that. Of course, this image is too big. Let's choose our image. I will say 100 pixels. Object width and border radius. Okay, and for this info container, again, I can give padding and separate my items. After this user, remember, we have the info container here. I'm going to give some padding. It's going to be vertical. And gap between items will be 30 pixels. And for each option, we have titles. I'm going to separate them. Just like that. Let's decrease this image size and give cursor pointer. It's going to be 30 pixels. I'm going to give my dark background color just like that. Let's give some padding, border radius, and cursor pointer. Just like that. And what about our photos? Let's decrease this size. Inside my option, we have photos. Flex direction will be column. And gap between our items will be 20. And inside we have photo item. And inside this we have photo detail. And finally, let's fix this. We are going to have our images and they are going to be 40 pixels. I'm going to give some border radius, let's say 5, and object fit. Okay, right now it looks much better. And let's separate our items here. Our logo should be here. So I'm going to come here and say display flags, line item center, justify content, space between. Just like that. And I can do the same thing for this information. I'm going to separate them and center vertically. Align item center and gap. Okay, I can decrease this size and change the color. After this image, we have a span. It's going to be smaller, gray. Actually, let's say light gray. And font weight will be 300. Okay, actually we can show here maximum 4 images. I'm gonna delete this photo item and the second one. Okay, and let's give class name for those icons so we can give exactly the same style. I'm gonna find download PNG. And I'm gonna give class name for them. And I will say icon. And inside this photo item, I can choose my icon. It's gonna be 30 pixels. Again, background color, padding. It's gonna be a circle. And cursor pointer. Just like that. By the way, I can give here a space. So I'm gonna find my parent div and margin top will be 20. Okay, perfect. By the way, there is a typo here. It's gonna be end. And finally, we have a button here. It's here. So inside information, we have our button. I'm gonna give some padding from top and bottom, left and right. It's a danger button, so its color will be this red color. The color will be white. I'm gonna delete the border and give border radius. And cursor will be pointer. Okay, it's not here. Our information is here. Oh, I said inside option, it should be outside. Okay, it's not here. Okay, it's here. And when I hover over, I can change its color. It can be darker. I'm gonna come here and say, if hover, make it this dark color. As you can see, I just increased its opacity. Just like that. What else we can do? If I refresh my page, as you can see, the first items are here, but whenever I open my chat, I want to scroll down. To do that, we can use useRef hook. I'm gonna close them, open up my chat component. And after all these messages, I'm gonna create a div here. And I'm gonna write andRef. Remember, it's under all our messages. So I can use useEffect hook, and whenever I open my page, I can scroll to that div. To do that, we can use useRef hook, const andRef, useRef hook, and whenever we visit our page, we are gonna run this effect. It's gonna run once, and we are gonna be using our ref here. And I will say scroll into view. And we can change its speed here using behavior. Just like that. Let's see. I'm gonna refresh. As you can see, this is what we want. What else we can add? Maybe we can add here a logout button. I'm gonna close here, open up detail. And after this button, I'm gonna add one more. And I'm gonna give a class name. Let's say logout. Let's open up the CSS file. And I will say, if the class name is logout, padding will be 10 pixels, and the background color will be this blue color. Let's increase the padding of this red one. I will say 15 pixels. Okay, and the space between each item is too large. Maybe let's make this 25. And I also want to reduce this container width. It's too long. Let's check index, and as you can see, it was 90. I'm gonna make this 80. Okay. And finally, maybe I can reduce this user size or space between them. I'm gonna come here. Let's say 15. And it's much better right now. Of course, if I make any changes, you can find it in the GitHub repository. But for now, it's enough. I don't want to waste time. Let's take care of our login page. I'm gonna close them and open up my app.js and my menu. And here, let's create one more component, and it's gonna be login. CSS and JavaScript file. Let's create our function. Firstly, I'm gonna write here a condition. Of course, we don't have any user yet, but I will say if we have a user, we are gonna show our container. And if we don't have any user, let's say false, we are gonna show our login page. Let's do that. I'll say if there is a user, call the components. If not, call the login page. Just like that. Of course, we should have a parent here. Just like that. I'm gonna import login. We are on the login page. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna split this login page into two pieces. The first one will be our login inputs and the second one will be the register inputs. So when we want to create a new user, we are gonna use the right side. If we want to log in, we are gonna be using the left side. So I can close here, open my page, and let's say item and the second item, and between them we can create a line, let's say separator, and in the first item I'll write a title and let's say welcome, and after that our login form. The first input will be email input, name will be email, and the second one will be password. Just like that. And after that, let's create a button and I will say sign in. Let's do the same thing for the second item. This time I'll say create an account. Again, email password, but one more, and it's gonna be username. Just like that. And remember, when we register, we can upload an image. So let's create that. I'm gonna create one more input and it's gonna be a file. And I'm gonna give an ID, let's say file, and it's here. When I click here, I can choose any image, but I don't wanna see this input. Instead, I'm gonna create a label and I will say upload an image and it's gonna look better. Let me show you and you are gonna understand better. If I say label and the ID of my input, which is file, when I click on this label, it's gonna automatically run this file input. Let's say upload an image. When I click on this text, as you can see, it opens my folders. Right now we don't need this input anymore. We can hide it. Let's use inner style and I will say display none. Okay, we have only this text. And before this text, we can show our image. And right now I can write my condition. If user selects any image, we are gonna show it here. If not, we can show the avatar PNG. Of course, to do that, we are gonna need a state. Let's come here. Const avatar set avatar. Use state hook. And I'm gonna create here an object. The file will be null. And the image URL will be empty string. So basically, at the beginning, we don't have any file. But if user selects any image here, let's say on change, I'm gonna say handle avatar. Let's create this. And we are gonna set our state, set avatar. And the file will be event target files, and the first file we can upload only one image, and I'm gonna write here URL and I'm gonna create an object URL because when we select any image I want to show it here immediately. To do that we are gonna need the object URL, so I will say URL create object URL and I'm gonna pass here my file again. Just like that. Of course, if we click here and don't select any image, it's gonna run this handle avatar. To prevent this, we can write here an if block and I will say if there is an image. Okay, right now I can show this URL. I'll say if there is an avatar, show the URL. If not, show the avatar PNG. Just like that. If I select any image here, as you can see, it changes our avatar. And I'm gonna update here, sign up, and that's all. Let's take care of our style. Firstly, let's say size 100%. I'm gonna center my items, and gap between left and right side will be 100 pixels. And for the items, I will give flex 1, so their sizes will be equal. And display flex, flex direction column, align items center, and gap between titles. These titles and form will be 20 pixels. And when it comes to forms, again, I'm gonna separate my items. Justify content center and gap between items will be 20. Just like that. Let's give a padding for our inputs. Padding 20. I'm gonna delete the border and the outline. My background color will be this dark color. Text color will be white. Let's give border radius 5 pixels. Just like that. Let's take care of this label. Inside our form, let's say label is gonna be 100%. Let's separate our items. Justify content space between. And I'm gonna give cursor pointer and underline here. And when we reduce this size, it's gonna be a space between them. Let's say cursor pointer. And the text decoration will be underline. And I'm gonna select my image. It's gonna be smaller. I'm gonna give some border radius. And of course, object fit. Okay. Maybe I can decrease its opacity because we are using this glass effect. So let's say opacity 60%. Okay. So when I click here, I can choose any image and it's gonna be on our component just like that. What about buttons? After this label, again 100%, I'm gonna give my padding, delete the border. The background color will be this blue color, text color will be white, and border radius. Of course, we can click. Just like that. Let's increase font weight. What about our line here? Let's give a height and width. It's here. After this item, let's say 80%, and width will be 2 pixels. And the background color will be our gray background color. Just like that. And one more thing, if we have any error or success message, I want to show it somewhere here. To do that, we can use a library. Let's open up our terminal and I will say npm install React.Toastify. To do that, I can create a new component. Let's say notification. Let's close here. And I'm gonna show my library component here. And it's gonna be toast container. And I can give here any position. And I want to see this on the bottom right. Of course, we need to use its CSS file just like that. And right now I can use my component on my app.js. Let's write it here. I'm gonna import and let's try. Actually, we don't need this CSS. I can delete. We already have this CSS file and I want to test it. Let's say on submit, handle login. If you are using a form, when you click on this button, it's gonna refresh the page. To prevent this, we are gonna be using event prevent default. And after that, I want to call my notification. To do that, we are gonna be using our library. And you can give here the type of the notification. Let's say warn and our message here. Let's try. I will click and as you can see, it's here. If you say success, the notification will be green. This is how it works. If you say error, it's gonna be red. Okay, perfect. So if we have any error or success message, we can use this library. Let's remove this for now. And that's all, I think. Let's open up our containers. Everything looks great. Maybe one more thing here. When I click on this button, I want to show here a model that we can search for any user. Of course, we can do it on this input, but we will also search for the existing chats. If we use exactly the same input, everything will be more complex. To prevent this, let's create one more component and show it on the middle of the container. I'm going to open up my components and let's say add user. CSS and JSX. Let's give class name and import. Basically, we are going to have here a container. At the top of that container, we are going to have a search bar and search button. When we click on that button, it's going to show our users. So let's create a form. I'm going to close this menu. And after this form, one more div and it's going to be the user. Inside this form, we are going to have the search input. Let's say placeholder username. And I'm going to give the username name and after a button. And I will say search. And if we find any user, we are going to show it here. And this is going to include our username and image. And on the right side, we are going to have a button that we can add a new user here. So let's say detail and a button. And here is going to be the user image. For now, I'm going to say avatar PNG and the username. Okay, let's use it on our chat list. Actually, I can move this folder inside chat list because it's gonna be a sub component. And let's use it here. I can use it at the end of the component, just like that. And its position will be absolute. And let's give a style. I'm gonna give 30 pixels padding. I'll give my dark background color and border radius. Let's give our position. To see this component on the middle of the screen, I can give 0 for each direction. And if I say margin auto, it's gonna be on the middle of the screen. We don't have any size. Let's say maximum content and height. And as you can see, it's here. Let's take care of this form. It's gonna be display flags. Gap between items will be 20. And for the input, I'm gonna give some padding and border radius. And I'm gonna delete the border and the outline. Just like that. And for this button, let's give a padding and our background color. Again, 10 pixels. Background color will be this blue color and the text color will be white. And we can click cursor pointer. Okay, what about this user? Again, it's gonna be horizontal. After this form, I will say user. Firstly, let's give margin top. I want to separate this user and this form. And as always, display flags, align item center, and justify content space between. Let's reduce this image size. Remember, we have the detail container, and inside we have our avatar. It's gonna be 50 pixels. Border radius and object fit. And again, I can separate my username and image. Perfect. And let's give exactly the same style here. But this time I'm gonna reduce my padding. It's gonna be 10. Okay, maybe we can increase this dark color. Just like that. And I can write here my condition right now. If we click here, we are gonna see this component. If we click back, we are gonna remove it. Let's open up our chat list. If you remember, we have the add mode here. I can use this as a condition. Just like that. I'm gonna refresh. It's not here, but when I click, it's here. Okay. So that's all. We finished our design part. If I make any changes, you can find it in the GitHub repository. So let's take care of the backend part. To do that, we are going to be using Firebase. Let's come here, close everything, and install our library. So let's open up our terminal and install Firebase. npm install Firebase. After this installation, we are going to need the configuration. To do that, let's visit console.firebase.google.com and let's create a new project. And I will say React chat. We don't need this. Let's create our project. It's gonna take a while. During this process, let's create our file. I'm gonna close these components and create a new file here. Let's say library, and inside Firebase.js. So we are ready to write our configuration here. Okay, our project is ready. We are going to create a web application. Let's click here. Let's give a name. Again, React chat. And this is how we can write our configuration. Let's copy this and paste inside our file. I'm gonna close here. If you want to, you can add this API key into an env file. Let's do that. I will say .env and let's say API key and paste this here. Let's use this. But if we do that, it's not going to be visible on the client side. But for the login process, we need our API key on the client. To do that, I should add here with. And right now, I can reach my data. To use this here, we are going to be using import meta env and the variable name. Just like that. Let's remove those comments. Just like that. I'm gonna save. And let's see what else we need. I'm gonna continue. And right now we are gonna build the Firebase authentication. As you can see, there are many providers here. You can use any social media provider, but also you can log in with email and password. Let's use this. I will enable. And right now we are ready to create users. But to save our user information, like avatar and description, and to save our chat information, our messages, we are gonna need a database. To do that, we are gonna be using Firebase Firestore. Let's click here. Create a database. Just choose here any location. We can start with the test mode. In this case, everybody can create data, but after creating our application, we are gonna change here. Let's create, and during this process, let's export our storage and Firebase authentication. To do that, I will say export const auth get auth. Okay, I can't import. Let's import manually. I will say get auth from Firebase auth. I will do the same thing for Firestore. Get Firestore. Let's export this also. I will say database and it's gonna be get Firestore. And one more thing we are gonna need, and it's gonna be our storage. Because in this application, we want to upload some images. To do that, we are gonna be using Firebase storage. Let's create. Again, I will say test mode. And let's export this. Get storage from Firebase storage. And I'm gonna export this here. I'm exporting them because we are going to be using them on our pages. For example, on the login page, we are going to upload our images using this storage. And we are going to create our user information using this database. And we will be able to log in or register using this authentication. Okay, I can close here. And our application is ready. Let's see how to log in and register. Firstly, I'm going to open up my login page. And if you remember, we have a form here, the register form. Let's create here on submit event. And I will say handle register. Let's create our function. I will close my menu and come here. And we are going to do exactly the same thing. And I will say handle register. And if you remember, inside our form, we have for inputs, file, username, email, and password. Using those names, we can reach to our items. And for this file, we already changed our avatar. we can use it directly. So what I'm gonna do is create here a form data, new form data, and using this, we can reach to our username, email, and password. It's gonna come from this form data. To do that, we can use object from entries and pass here our form data. Let's see. Of course, to see our login page, we should update this user. It was true, but it's gonna be false. I'm gonna open up my console, write here anything. Okay, it's not here because I didn't pass here my event target. Basically, it represents our form. And inside this form, I can reach my inputs using their names. Let's see again. And John is here. This is how it works. So right now we have our inputs and we can select any image, but for the authentication, remember, we are just gonna need the user email and password. So basically for the authentication, we are just gonna need this email and password. But after creating our user, we can store this username and this avatar into our database. We are gonna take care of this later. Before, let me show you how to create a user using email and password. Firstly, I'm gonna write here a try catch block. If we have any error, we are gonna show it here. And also remember, we can show our notifications using our library. It's gonna be error and the error message. So let's create our user. Of course, it should be an async function because we are making a database request. And I will say const response await. And we are gonna call create user with email and password method. And we are gonna pass our inputs. Let's import this first from Firebase, Auth. And remember, we have the get Auth function. We have to use this function inside this method because otherwise it will not know our Firebase configuration. Let's do that. Create user with email and password. We are gonna pass here our auth method and after our email and password. Let's see. I will write here john@gmail.com, any password here. I will sign up and let's check our Firebase. I'm gonna come here. And as you can see, it's here. And this is its user ID. Okay, this is how we are creating user. But as I said, we need our user information. To do that, we are going to be using our database. Let's see how to add item to Firebase Firestore. I'm going to open up the documentation. Let me zoom in. Add data. We already have our configuration. And after that, as you can see, we are going to need the set document method. And inside, we are going to pass here our database, which is in our Firebase.js here. And after that, we are going to write here our collection name. In this case, it's going to be users. You can give here any specific ID. And remember, in the authentication, we have the user ID. We can use exactly the same ID here and pass our username and avatar. I'm going to show you how to upload image later, but before, let's try to add our user. I'm going to copy here. Let's import them. Just like that. Doc and set doc from Firebase Firestore and database from our Firebase file. As I said, the collection name will be users, and we are gonna pass here the ID that comes from this response. And it's gonna be response user.uid. Let's delete this user because we are gonna create a new one. And we are gonna pass here the username. It's gonna be the username that comes from our form. And since we are using exactly the same name, we don't need to write here. We can use it directly like that. And also I'm gonna pass my email, and also let's pass here its ID. We are already storing our document with this ID, but I'm gonna pass this ID into my database also, because when we search for our user, it will be much easier to use this ID instead of this one. When we do it, we are gonna understand better. And also, when we create a user, we are gonna have a blocked list. At the beginning, it's gonna be an empty array. When we block any user, we are gonna pass the ID of that user here. And if everything is okay, we can send a notification. It's gonna be a success message. And let's say account created. You can log in now. And I want to create one more document, by the way, because when we log in, remember, we are going to fetch our chats, but at the beginning, of course, it's going to be an empty array. Let's create one more set document, and it's going to be user chats. And again, I'm going to pass here the user ID, and the chats will be an empty array. We are not going to have any chat. Okay, when we create a new user, it's going to automatically create our user and user chat in the database. Let's try. We don't have any user here. Okay, let's create. I will say John. Again, our mail address and password. I will sign up. As you can see, our notification is here. If we check our Firebase, we can see that our user is here. Let's check the database. As you can see, chats is empty, and inside users, we have our information. And as you realize, this ID and this ID are equal. But there is one more thing here. We have to upload an image. So again, let's delete those collections. And this one. And our user here. Because this time we are gonna need an avatar. Let's see how to upload an image. Again, inside the documentation, as you can see, we are going to be using our storage. And after that, we are going to create a reference. We are going to pass our storage and the image name. And after using this reference, we are going to start uploading our images. Let me scroll down and show you the completed version of this process. As you can see, we already have our storage. We are going to create a reference using the name, and after we are going to be using this method, we will pass here our reference and the file. Remember, in our application, we have author, and inside we have the file. We are going to pass it here and start our uploading process. And the best thing is we can control our progress. If we cancel uploading, we can show any error. If something goes wrong, we can show again notification. And if everything is okay, it's going to return us our image URL and we can send it to our database. This is the idea. So let's copy here. I'm not gonna paste it here because when we send a message, again, we are gonna be using this upload method. To not repeat ourselves, I'm gonna create a new file. Inside library, I'll say upload.js. Let's create our function, upload. It's gonna be an async function. We are gonna pass our file here, and using this file, we are gonna start Firebase upload. Let's export this, export default, upload. Okay, right now we can use this function everywhere, and I'm gonna paste my function here. Let me close this menu and remove those comments. So what I'm gonna do is turn this function into a promise because I want to return this download URL. In our component, we can use it in this try catch block, and we can say const image URL await upload, and we are going to pass here our file. So we are going to await this process. In this case, it should be a promise. So I will say return new promise, resolve and reject. If there is an error, we are gonna reject this promise and send that error. And I'm gonna wrap my upload task. Just like that. And if there is an error, we are gonna reject. Let's write here any message. Something went wrong. And we can pass here our error message or error code. And here, if we have the download URL, we are gonna send it. So I will say resolve and send this URL. By the way, there is something wrong here. Let me fix it. Of course, it shouldn't be here. Let's take this back and remove this. Okay. So right now I can import my functions just like that. Storage from Firebase.js, ref from Firebase storage. Okay. We can directly use here file.name, but if we use exactly the same name when we upload image, it's gonna be a conflict. To prevent this, we need to pass here a unique name. To do that, we can use a date, new date. So it's going to create here a unique timestamp. Let's say images folder. And after this date and also the image name. Okay, if you want to, you can reject when you pause uploading, but actually we don't need here. If you want to, you can show your progress, and that's all. I think we can use it on your login page. Let's do that. We can take the image and we can paste here. Avatar will be this image URL. So let's try. I'm gonna refresh my page. Let's choose any image here. John. And passwords. I'm gonna sign up. Okay, there is success message. I'm gonna refresh. My user is here. This is the ID. Let's check our database. Inside users, as you can see, we have avatar and all this information. And in the chats, let's check the ID. And this is exactly the same ID. Okay, this is what we want. And right now, using this login form, we can sign in. But before, I want to add here a loading indicator. When we click on that button, we are going to show a text. To do that, I'm going to create here one more use state. After React 19, we are going to be using form actions, use form state, use form status hooks, but for now, since React 19 is still beta, let's use the old way. So I will say loading, set loading, use state hook. At the beginning it's gonna be false, and when we click on that button, it's gonna be true. And if it's successful or if there's an error, we are gonna make it false again. So I will say finally, set loading will be false. So let's disable our buttons using this loading. I'm gonna also disable here if it's loading. And I'll do exactly the same thing here. And let's open up our CSS file. And for button, I will say if it's disabled, cursor will be not allowed. And let's change the background color. It was this color, but I'm gonna reduce its opacity, just like that. Okay. Let's save, and I can write here a condition. If loading, write here loading. If not, sign up. I can do the same thing for the login. Just like that. Let's try. I'm gonna refresh, choose an image, Jane, I'm gonna sign up, as you can see, perfect, and our user should be here. As you can see, we have two documents, and inside users, Jane is here. So how we are gonna log in? It's much easier. Again, we are gonna be using our inputs, and after that we are gonna be using sign in with email and password methods. As you can see, it's here. Let's use it. Inside login, again, I'll say async, try catch. If there's an error, console log, and also send the notification. Finally, set loading will be false, and when we start this function, it's gonna be true. And again, I'm gonna take my data. Let's copy here. Just like that. This time we are not gonna need this username. And after, we are gonna use it in this function. Let's copy this. Await. And inside, again, we are gonna pass our auth function, email and password. And that's all. Let's see. I will say John and password. I will sign in. Okay, this is the username, of course. It's gonna be email. And as you can see, there is no error. That means we are logged in. But how we are gonna know that we are logged in? We have to store our user information somewhere. If you are using Firebase, it's really easy to keep track of your login process. I'm gonna close them, open up my app.js, and I'm gonna write here useEffect hook. And using this useEffect hook, we can listen authentication when we create new accounts, when we log in or log out. It's gonna always listen our authentication and it's gonna send us the latest status. Let me show you how to do that. Remember, if you are listening any real-time data, you have to use a cleanup function on sub on auth state changed. We are gonna pass here our auth function and it's gonna return us our user. Using this user, you can do anything you want. Let's console log. And after that, we are going to create here our cleanup function. Just like that. If you didn't watch my useEffect video, you can watch it to understand this cleanup function. That video is a little bit outdated, but it's important to understand the useEffect basics. After React 19, I'm gonna create one more video about useEffect. Okay, I'm gonna save, open my console, and as you can see, we have the user here. Its email is here, its user ID is here, and in this case, we can fetch our user information from the database using this ID, and we can store it on our application. And in that case, if we have a user, we are not going to see this page anymore. We are going to see our chat container, and using the user ID, we are going to fetch our chats. So what you can do, you can get all the user information from Firestore here, but I want to show you how you can store your items using React state management tools. Because if you use a state management tool, you can store your items easily and you can get those items inside any component you want. Before starting, let me show you why React management tools are important. In our React app, we have the app.js, and inside our app.js, we have two main containers. The first one is login container, and the second one is the chat container. So if we have a user in our app.js, we are going to show the login container. If we don't have, we are going to show the chat container. To do that, we can use a useState and store our user. So if there is a user, show the login container. If not, show the chat container. In this case, we need to take this user from the app.js. We need to pass this as a prop. And also, inside the chat container, we have different components. We have the list component, chat component, and details component. And again, we need to use the user on those components. Because remember, inside the list component, again, we have two components, and inside chat and detail, inside the list component, we have the user information component and the chat list component. And inside chat, we have the chat messages and the text input. And inside detail, we have the user detail and the chat detail. And again, we are gonna need to use the user information inside those components. To do that, we should take this user from the parent and pass them here. And for the child components, again, we should pass them. And if you remember, inside details, we have the logout button. When we click on that button, it should remove our user. In this case, we have to use this setUser function. So now we also need the setUser, and we have to pass it here, and here, and here. And for the login container, after the login process, we should update our user, and that means we are going to need our set function here. In our application, we have just 3 components, but imagine you have many others, and you shouldn't send your states like that. This is called prop drilling. If you use this method, you are gonna unnecessarily re-render your components, and also you will probably forget some states and make some mistakes. What if we have an independent state somewhere here? And this state will store our user information and the set function. And what if we can get this user and set user whenever we want and in any component we want? For example, in the chat container, we can directly say, give me the user. Or in the chat list, again, I need the user. Or in the logout button, we can say, I want to set the user. So as you can see, we don't have to pass the information through our parents. We can directly get this information from this store. In this case, no more prop drilling, no more unnecessary rendering. Everything is much easier. So this is the idea of state management tools. So let me show you how to create a store and how to store our states. The most popular one is Redux, but I want to show you my favorite one, Zustand. It's really easy to use. As you can see, we are going to need this library. Let's install quickly. npm install Zustand. And after that, we are going to create our store using the create function. And as you can see, you can create any state here. And using some actions, you can update your state. For example, when you call this action, it's going to get the previous state and increase that number. So whenever you call this action on your components, it's going to increase this number. And here we have another action and it sets the state and makes it 0 again. Or here you can pass any data on your components and using that data you can update your state. So let's create our user store and you are going to understand better. I'm going to copy here. We don't need this anymore. I'm going to open up my menu and inside library, let's say user store. I'm going to paste it here and I'm going to change this name. It's going to be use user store because later we are going to create one more store and it's going to be use chat store. Let's close here, by the way. And inside my state, we are going to have the current user. Let's say null. And let's create an action. I'm going to delete them. And I will say fetch user info. It's going to be an async function. We are going to get the user ID and update our state. So basically, whenever our authentication status changes, we are going to take this user's ID. Remember, the ID is inside here. We are going to pass this to our action, and using that ID, we are going to update this user. We are going to fetch the avatar, we are going to fetch the username, or whatever it might be inside this database. Let's do that. Firstly, I will say if there is no UID, that means we are logged out. In this case, I'm going to return set state. The current user will be null. And also I can create here one more item and it's going to be isLoading because whenever our state changes, isLoading will be true. Instead of any blank page or error, we are going to show this isLoading indicator. And I will say at the beginning it's going to be true. And whenever we end our fetching operation, it's going to be false. Just like here, isLoading is going to be false. And after that, if we have a user ID, we can fetch the user information. Let's say try catch. If there is an error, it's going to be exactly the same. And by the way, we can show this error for the development mode. And inside this try block, we can get our data. Let's see how to do that. Again, we are going to create a reference and we are going to write here our collection name, the ID of the document. In our case, it's going to be users and the user ID. And after that, using this function, we are going to get our information. And if we have that user, using this data function, we can reach to our avatar and username. Let's do that. I'm going to copy here and paste. Let's import this. And DB is going to be users. And we are going to pass here our user ID. Remember, it comes from here. And after that, we are going to get the document. If it exists, we are going to update our user using this data. So let's say set current user is going to be this data is loading will be false. And else, if we don't have the user, it's going to be null and is loading will be false again. And let's export this. So using this store, we are able to reach our current user and is loading and this fetch user info action. So let's use them here. I'll say const from use user store. And right now I can reach current user is loading and fetch user info. So let's use this first. I will come here and I will say if it's loading, return a div and right here loading. Let's give a class name and update our div using index.css. Because remember, our container is here. Firstly, I'm going to give a padding. Font size will be bigger, border radius. And the background color will be this dark color. Okay, let's save. And right now, instead of this user, we can use current user. And whenever our state changes, we can fetch our data. And we are going to pass here the user UID. In this case, our dependency will be this function. Let's see. I'll say console log current user. I'm going to save. And as you can see, we are not on the login page anymore. If I refresh my page, as you can see, loading, and after we are on the home page. If I open up my console, you can see that our information is here. And we can use this information inside this component here, or in details, wherever we want. This is how important to use state management tools. By the way, of course, it's rendering twice because we are using the strict mode here. Again, if you watch my useRef video, you are going to understand the reason. But don't worry, it's just for the development mode. When you deploy your applications, it's not going to render twice. So let's use this information here. I'm going to copy this. I'll save, close everything, and open up user info. Let's import here. We are going to need only current user. And here is going to be current user username. And we can write here our condition, use the current user avatar. If it doesn't exist, use this avatar PNG. I will save. And as you can see, our information is here. What about this logout button? I'm going to open up my detail. And it's really easy to log out. I will just create here on click event. And whenever we click on this button, it's going to call our auth function. Remember, it's inside Firebase.js. And we are going to call the sign out function. That's all. When we do that, our state will change here. In this case, the user will be null. So when we try to fetch users, we are not going to have any ID. So our current user will be null. Let's try. I will click here. As you can see, we are on the login page. If I refresh, perfect. Let's log in as Jane. And perfect. Of course, our password is too weak, but anyway, it's just a test mode. So right now, using this user ID, we can fetch our chats here. Remember, inside our database, we have user chats, and those IDs are our user IDs. So when we fetch our data here, we are not going to have any chat, but later we are going to add. So let's see how to get this data. But also, when a user sends us a message, we are going to update our chats immediately. So basically, we are going to fetch the real-time data. So instead of fetching data like this, we are going to listen our collection. To do that, we are going to be using onSnapshot method. As you can see, we can get real-time updates. To do that, again, we are going to be using document. We are going to write here the collection name and the ID. In this case, it's going to be user chats. And the ID will be our user ID. And after that, it's going to return the data. And since we are fetching a real-time data, as you can see, we should create a cleanup function. You know how to do that. I'm going to copy this, close everything here, and open up my chat list. Firstly, I'm going to get my current user. Use user store. Why it's not importing? Okay, let's just paste. And after that, I'm going to create here a useEffect hook. Whenever we run this page, this component is going to automatically fetch our data. And after fetching, we are going to store it somewhere. Let's create one more state. And I will say chats. Set chats. At the beginning is going to be an empty array. And here I'm going to create this onSub function. And at the end, I'm going to clean up. Just like that. Let's make it like this. Let's import them. OnSnapshot, document, and DB is going to be user chats. And we are going to pass here the current user.id. I'm not writing user ID because remember, in our database, we are storing them as ID. And finally, we can set our state. Set chats, just like that. In this case, we should create here a dependency. Whenever our current user ID changes, it's going to run again. Let's see. Chats. I'm going to open my console. We have the chats and it's an empty array. So it works. So using those chats, I can update my list here. Let's copy this. Actually, let's remove here. And right now, I'm going to delete those items. I'm just going to leave one of them. And using my chats, I can show my items. For each chat, return this div. As you can see, there is a warning because we need to add here a unique key. and it's gonna be chat.chatID. And here is gonna be chat.lastMessage. But there is something important here. As you can see, we are also gonna need this user. But in our user chats, we are not gonna store our user information, because if you store that and when the user changes their user information like avatar or username, we won't be able to see them. To prevent this, we are gonna store here only receiver ID, and using that ID, we are gonna fetch our users using this collection. In this case, we are gonna get the latest information of the user. So what I'm gonna do is, after fetching chats, we are also gonna get the user information. So let's remove here, and I will say const items is gonna be our chats. Remember, it's inside document and data. Actually, let's change this name. I'll say response, because when we fetch our user, we are gonna use document again. To prevent any conflict, I'm gonna change this name and .chats. And right now, using each chat, I'm gonna fetch my user. In this case, it should be an async function, because we are gonna make a request. And since we have a list here, we can use promise all. So I will say const promises items dot map, and for each item we are gonna fetch users. So again, here is gonna be async. And remember how we are fetching data. We are gonna get our reference, and using get document function, we are gonna fetch our data. Let's do that. I will say user document ref and user document snap. Let's import this. And here is gonna be users. And we are gonna pass here item.receiver ID. Let's pass this here. And finally, it's gonna return us our user. Let's say const user equals user snap dot data. By the way, there's a typo. And after that, we can return all the chat information, this item, and also this user. So I will say return everything inside the item, which means our chat information, and also this user. So let's resolve this. I will say const chat data await promise all, and let's pass it here. And finally, we can update our state here, set chats, and it's gonna be chat data. And also I want to show the latest chats first, so we can sort them here. So I will say sort. As you can see, we can create here a compare function. It's gonna take two items and it's gonna compare them here. In our case, we are gonna check updated at times. So let's say A and B, and return B dot updated at minus A dot updated at. If you don't know JavaScript sort, you can check it quickly. Don't be confused. There is nothing complex here. Of course, there is no item right now. So let's create our first chat using this button. When I write any input here and click, it's gonna search for that username. And if I click on this button, we are gonna create our first chat. Let's do that. I'm gonna close here, and I will open up add user. So using this form, we can take this username and search for that user in the database. So I will say handle search. Let's create const handle search event. Since we are using a form, we should write here prevent default. Otherwise, it's gonna refresh our page. And after, I'm gonna get this username. Remember how we are doing this? Form data, new form data. I'll say const username, form data.get, and the username. Let's search for our user. In this case, it's gonna be async. Try catch. And this time we are gonna need a condition. To do that, we are gonna be using the query method. As you can see, we are gonna create our reference. We are gonna pass here collection name, which is users. And using the query method, we can search for any field inside that user. In this case, the username will be this username. Let's do that. I'm gonna copy this, paste here. Let's say useRef. I'm gonna import this. Okay, it's not coming. Let's change here. Okay, let me import them quickly. DB from Firebase.js and the others from Firebase Firestore. Let's say useRef. And the username will be our username. After that, we can get our data, const query snapshot, await get documents, and I'm gonna pass here my query. And after that, if it's not empty, we are gonna update our user. If query snapshot is not empty, we are gonna set our user. Let's create here user, set user, use state hook. At the beginning, it's gonna be null. After that, we are gonna set this state here. And it's gonna be query snapshot dot documents, because we can have multiple items with this condition. But in our case, remember, the username is unique. So we are gonna have only one item inside this array. So if I say take the first item and return me the data, it's gonna return that user. Let's see. Actually, I can directly write here. I will say if there is a user, show this div. And here is gonna be user.avatar. If it doesn't exist, use this one. And here is gonna be user.username. Let's see. We are Jane. I'm gonna search for John. And there is something wrong. Again, I forgot here event target. And here is gonna be documents. As I said, it's gonna return us an array. And let's see. I'm gonna search and John is here. So right now, when I click on this button, I'm gonna create a new chat, and also I'm gonna update the user chats, because inside my documents, we don't have any chat. It's empty. But as soon as I click here, I'm gonna update this user chats, and we are gonna pass here the chat ID, the last message, the receiver ID, and updated at date. Before doing this, let's create our chat. I'm gonna come here and I will say on click event handle at const handle at. Of course, it's gonna be an async function, and here I'll say try catch. And firstly, I'm gonna create my new chat. To do that, I can write here my reference chat ref collection. I'm gonna pass here my DB and let's say chats. We don't have yet, but we are gonna create, and it's gonna include the created at and all the messages of that chat. Remember, user chats will be on the left side. When we click on any user chat, we are going to take the chat ID and search for our chats. Okay, I'm going to create one more, and it's going to be user chats ref. Let's add a new chat first. Await. Remember how we are adding document. We are passing here our reference, which is chat ref, and after our data. The created at will be Firebase server timestamp, and the messages will be an empty array. Let's import this just like that. But after that, we are gonna need this document ID. I cannot reach it writing const chat. It's not gonna work. Firstly, we are gonna need our document reference, and using that reference, we will be able to reach this chat ID. To do that, I'm gonna create here a new reference, chat ref document, and I'm gonna pass here my collection reference. Just like that. Right now I can use it here. After adding this document, we can reach its ID. Let me show you. New chatref.id. Let's try. I'm gonna click here. And as you can see, this is our chat ID. So using this ID, I can update my user chats. Let's refresh here. We have chats, and inside created at and messages. So using this ID, I can update my user chats. We are going to add here our chat ID, last message, and other information. So let's remove this one. And try to update our user chats. To do that, I will come here and I will say await update document doc user chats ref, and we are going to pass here the user chat ID, which is the user ID, and after finding that chat, we can update the chat array. To do that, we are going to be using array union function. It basically allows us to push any item inside our array, and here is going to be chat ID, which is new chatref.id. We don't need this console log anymore. And also we are going to add here the last message. Of course, it's going to be an empty string. We will not have any last message. And we are going to have the receiver ID. And it's going to be current user.id, but we don't have here. Let's import const current user, use user store. I'm going to import here, and we can pass our user ID here. And finally, updated at. Again, we can pass here server timestamps, but if you are using array union, it's not gonna work. You cannot use them together. So what we can do here is use a date. So we are gonna send the current date. So in this case, it's gonna update the user chat and pass here our ID. But we should do exactly the same thing for our user chat. So I'm gonna duplicate this. This time we are gonna update our chats. So I will say current user.id, and this time it's gonna be user ID. Let's try. It's empty. This is empty. We don't have any chats. Let's try to add this user again. I'll say John. I'll say add. Let's check. our chat is here. And if we check user chats, you are gonna see that this ID is exactly the same ID. For the other user, the receiver ID is different. Okay. Let's refresh here. We have one item because we have a chat right now, but we didn't update here. Let's open up chat list. And here is going to be chat.user.username. Just like that. And this avatar, chat.user.avatar. If it doesn't exist, use this avatar PNG. Just like that. And if we log in as john@gmail.com 126. As you can see, Jane is here. Right now, when I click on this button, I'm gonna fetch my chat and we will be able to see all the messages of that chat. After this use effect, I'm gonna create a new one because we are gonna listen a real-time data. In this case, I will say on sub. Remember how we are listening on snapshot document. We are gonna pass here our DB and chats, and we are gonna pass here the chat ID. For now, let's paste this ID. After, we are gonna be using state management tool and take that ID dynamically, but for now, let's paste it. And after that, it's gonna return us a response. And using that response, we can set our chat. Let's create one more use state. Chat, set chat. And I'm gonna set this here. Response.data. And after that, we should write here the cleanup function. Return. Just like that. Let's import them. I will just paste. Let's see our chat. I will refresh, and as you can see, our chat is here. So let's create another state and store our chat ID. And also we can send the user information, so we can use it here, here, and here. Let's do that. I'm gonna open up my library and create one more store. I will just copy and paste and change the name. And I will say chat store. And here is gonna be use chat store. And I'm gonna store here my chat ID. At the beginning is gonna be null. The user will be null. And also I'm gonna store two more things. Remember, in our application, we are storing the blocked array here. We can block any user using this button, or they might block us. In this case, we cannot send any information here. And also, if a user blocks us, we cannot see the user avatar and the username. So let's add them here also. Is current user blocked, and let's say is receiver blocked. At the beginning, they are gonna be false. And right now, I'm gonna write my action. Let's remove here, and I will say change chat. When we click on this item, we are gonna send the chat ID and the user information. We are gonna take them, and using those information, we are gonna check if the user is blocked or the receiver is blocked. To do that, we are gonna need the current user from the user storage. It's really easy to do that. I will say const current user, use userStore, get state, and I'm gonna pass here what I want to fetch, and it's gonna be current user. So using this, we can check if the current user is blocked. Let's write here a comment. And after, we are gonna check if receiver is blocked. Let's do that. I will say if user dot blocked, remember it's an array, includes our user ID. That means we are blocked. So right now I can update my state. I'll say return set. Let's copy here and paste. Chat ID will be this chat ID, but we are not gonna pass this user because, as I said, if we are blocked, we cannot see the user information. So let's leave it like that, and null is current user blocked, true, and it's gonna be false. So I can do the same thing here. This time we are gonna check our blocked array. Current user blocked includes the user ID. If it is, we can see the user, but this time here is gonna be false and here is gonna be true. And one more thing, when we click on this button, we are gonna block this user, or if we already blocked, we are gonna open that block. So let's write here one more action, and it's gonna be change block. I will say set. We are gonna take the previous state. We are not gonna change anything. They are gonna be the same, but we are gonna update is receiver blocked. And if it's true, it's gonna be false. If it's false, it's gonna be true. So basically I will say take the previous state and is receiver blocked. By the way, there is something wrong here. Okay. So let's call this action on our chat list. Oops. JSX. When we click on any div here, we are going to call a function, let's say handle select, and we are going to pass here the chat ID. Remember, it's here. Just like that. Let's create this function. We are going to take the ID. Actually, we are going to also need this user, so I'm going to pass the chat directly, not ID. And let's say async. I said async because when we click on any chat here, we are going to update our user chat. We are going to add here is seen field, and it's going to be true. Because when we click, that means we read our messages. We are going to do this later, but before, let's call our chat store. I'm going to come here, use chat store, and change, what was the name? Change chat. Let's use it here. We are going to pass the chat ID and the user. In this case, we don't need this hard-coded ID anymore. Instead, we are going to be using our chat ID. That comes from our chat store. Let's copy this, paste here. I will import. This time we are going to need only chat ID here. And using that ID, we can fetch our chat. In this case, of course, we are going to need this dependency. And let's see right now, I'm going to refresh. And as you can see, there's a problem here. Because at the beginning, our chat ID is null. So we shouldn't see this page. If you remember in our app.js, If we have a user, we can see all these items. But right now, I can write here a condition. I'll say if chat ID show this chat component. I can do the same thing here. Of course, we are gonna need our store. Let's import, and it's gonna be chat ID. Okay. As you can see, right now we have only this component. But when I click here, okay, there is something wrong. Chat list. I want to also get my chat ID. And let's console log. Okay, at the beginning it's null. When I click, nothing is happening. Oh, because our user is not blocked or this receiver. In this case, again, we should set our state. So I'm gonna copy this. Chat ID, user. If we are not blocked and if the user is not blocked, they are gonna be false. Actually, let's write here else if and else. Let's see, right now I'm gonna refresh. I'm gonna click, and as you can see, our chat is here and we don't have any message. Let's use those messages to show those items. I'm gonna come here and using this chat, I can show my messages here. Right now, I'm gonna delete all those messages. Actually, let's leave only one message here in this one because there is an image. And I'm gonna wrap here and I will say chat.messages.map. For each message, we are gonna return this div. In this case, we are gonna need here a unique key. We can use its created at date. And if there is an image, we are gonna show it. If message includes image, show it here. And here is gonna be message text. And here is gonna be message dot created at. But if we do this, it's gonna give us an error. I'm gonna leave it like that for now. After we are gonna update. I will click. Okay, let's write it like that. And right now, let's try to add a new message. When I write something here and click on this button, we are gonna send this message to our chat collection. Remember, we have a text state here. We can use it. I'm gonna come here and create here on click event, handle send. Firstly, if there is no text, we are not gonna do anything. If it's empty, or let's write it like that, we are gonna say return. Don't do anything. And after, I'll say try catch block. If there's an error, console log. In this case, here is gonna be async. And await update document. I will pass here doc and my DB. Collection name will be chats. And I'm gonna pass here the chat ID. Remember, it comes from our store. And after that, I can write here what I want to update. Remember, inside chat, we have messages and it's an array. And you know how to push items. We are gonna be using array union. So I will say messages, array union, and pass here the sender ID. It's gonna be our ID, current user. Okay, we don't have. Let's create quickly. Use user store and current user. I'm gonna use our ID here. Text will be text and the created at will be new date. And after, there is one more important thing here. When we send a message, we are gonna update our user chat. Because remember, inside the user chats, we have the last message. And also, as soon as we send the message, is seen field will be true, but the other users will be false. So the other user can recognize that the chat is unread. When the user clicks on this item, only that time is seen is gonna be true. To do that, let's get all our chats, user chats, const user chat ref, doc, db, user chats, and I'm gonna pass here my user ID. And let's get the snapshot, await, get document, and our reference here. And remember, if it exists, we are gonna get the data. Let's say const user chats data snapshot.data. Okay, right now we have all our chats. And now I have to find exactly the same chat that we are writing. And after finding that chat, we are gonna update its last message and seen by field. To do that, we can find index of that chat. Let's say const chat index, user chats data. We have the chats array, and I will say find index. And for each chat, I'm gonna search for its chat ID, and it should be equal to the chat ID. Right now, we know which index number we should update. User chats data and the index number here. Which fields we are gonna update is gonna be last message. And we are gonna write here our text and one more, and is seen will be true because we are sending the message. And finally, one more, and it's gonna be updated at date. We are doing this because we are gonna see the latest messages. When someone sends a message, it's gonna be on the top of our chats. So let's say date.now. And after that, using this information, we can update our user chat. So I will say await update doc. We are gonna pass here our reference, and chats will be user chats data dot chats. But again, we should also update the other user's chat. When we send a message, we are gonna update the latest text, updated at date, but this time is seen will be false. So we can show here an indicator like a background color, so user can understand that it's a new message. So instead of writing them again and again, I can write here the user IDs and create here a loop. Let's say const user IDs, current user.id, and also user.id. Okay, it's not here. Like that. And using this array, I can run exactly the same thing and update the other user. So let's say user IDs for each async. I'm gonna take the ID, and for each ID, I'm gonna run exactly the same thing. And this time here is gonna be ID, and we are gonna need here a condition. If ID equals current user.id, it's gonna be true. If it's not, it's gonna be the other user. In this case, is seen will be false. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna write anything. Hi. I will send. As you can see, our message is here, but we cannot see the last message. There is something wrong. If I refresh the page, okay, it's not here. That means we couldn't update user chats because here I forgot writing .chats. Remember, inside user chats, we have the chats array, and inside that array, we have the chat information. And here is gonna be lowercase. I hope everything is alright. Let's see. Test. I'm gonna send, and as you can see, it's here. This is our chat message. If we check our user chats, this is our user ID, is seen is true, and this is the other user ID, is seen is false. So using this property, we can update our item background. Let's do that. I'm gonna open up chat list, and I'm gonna write here an inner style, and I will say background color. If chat is seen, it's gonna be transparent. If not, let's say this blue color. I'm gonna save. As you can see, it's transparent, but here it's gonna be blue. But when I click here, it's gonna be true again. To do that, we are gonna update our user chat. We have handle select here. We can update here. Let's copy this, paste here. User chats is gonna be current user.id, and after finding our index number, we are gonna update is seen, and it's gonna be true. I can delete here, update, but actually we don't have to fetch this data. We are on the list page. We already have our chats here, but also we have the users. What I want to do is I want to get all my chats without this user. In this case, we don't have to fetch all the information again. To do that, I will say const user chats.map, and for each item, I'm gonna eliminate the users. To do that, let's destructure them. I will get the user, and I'm gonna spread the rest of the information, and it will come from our item. Right now, our chats are here. User information is here. I'm gonna return this rest. After that, using this array, I can find my index number, const chat index dot find index. For each item, we are going to check their chat ID. If it equals our chat ID, remember it's here. Right now I can use my isSeen field, user chats, the index number is seen, and it's going to be true. Right now I can update my user chats, so I will do exactly the same thing here. User chats are ID, and I can say try catch here. await, update the reference and the data I want to change. And the chats will be user chats. And finally, we can update our chat. I'm gonna save. And right now I'm gonna refresh. If I click, as you can see, its color has changed. If I refresh the page, it's not blue anymore. Okay, perfect. So what about image? When I click on this button, we will be able to select any image and we are gonna show it here. And again, we are gonna store that image inside useState. And when we click on this button, we are gonna use our upload function and take the image URL. Let's do that. I can close here, open chat again, and I'm gonna create my image state. Image set image. Remember, we are gonna need the file and the URL. And let's remember our login page. When we update our file input, we are running this function. I will do exactly the same thing here. Let's write it here. And this time I'll say handle image. And here is going to be set image. And let's call this function inside our input. Of course, we don't have any input yet. Let's create. It's going to be a file. And remember, we are going to need here an ID. And I will give an inner style. And I will say display none. And let's make this label. ID will be file. So when we click on this image, it's going to run this file input. And I will say on change. And it's going to be handle image. We can have any image, or we can also send only text. To do that, I'm going to write here a condition. Let's create image URL. At the beginning, it's going to be null. And I will say, if we have an image, we can upload this file and change this image URL. So I will say await. Remember, we have an upload function and we can pass here the image file. And it's going to upload our image. In this case, we are going to have the image URL. And I can write here a condition. I will spread my condition here. I will say if there's an image URL, the image will be image URL. So if it's null, we are not going to have anything here. So this expression will be empty. It's not going to send anything. But if it's not null, the image of this message will be the image URL that we have uploaded here. And finally, after sending our message, we can update our image. Again, file will be null, URL will be an empty string, and also I'm gonna reset my text, set text, and it's gonna be an empty string again. And right now, when we select any image, we can show it on the center div. We have the message div and inside texts, and we can show our images here. So I can do exactly the same thing here. I'll say message, and it's going to be our message, texts, and inside image.url. Of course, if it exists. So let's write here a condition. Let's see. When I click here, I can choose any image and it's here. And if I write something here, test image and send, And as you can see, this is our text and image, and this is the latest message. If you check here, you can see that we have a new message. Nice picture. It's immediately here, but there is something wrong. We forgot to change this message class name. So I'm gonna write here a condition. I'll say if message.sender ID equals current user ID is gonna be message on. If not, it's gonna be just message. Just like that. Response. And it's here. So what about blocking user? If you remember in our storage, let's open up chat store. We have change block action here. We can use it. Let's open up detail. And here, let's say on click, handle block. Let's get all this information from here and also our current user. I will just copy and paste just like that. Let's import. Using this user, I can change my user information. User.avatar. If it doesn't exist, use avatar PNG. I'm using question mark because remember, if we are blocked, it's gonna be null. And I can do the same thing for the username. Oops, here is gonna be username. Just like that. And here. Okay, perfect. By the way, again, let's change here inside chat. User.username. Just like that. When we click on this button, we are going to run this function and it's going to change is receiver blocked. Firstly, as I said, if we are blocked, the user will be null. If it is, I'm just going to return. We are not going to do anything. If not, we are going to update our database. So I will say async try catch await update. We are going to pass here our reference. Let's create here const user doc ref document. We are going to pass here our DB and the collection name users. And we are going to pass here the current user ID. And here we are going to update our user. And we are going to update the blocked array. Remember, it's inside user. And I will say if is receiver blocked, we are going to remove. To do that, we are going to be using array remove. And let's remove the user ID. If it's not blocked, this time we are going to block this user using array union. And finally, if everything is okay, we can change our block just like that. And right now, I can write here a condition. If we are blocked or the user is blocked, we can show different texts. So I will say, is current user is blocked, you are blocked. If not, we are going to check the receiver, is receiver blocked. This time, user blocked. If not, if no one is blocked, we can say block user. And again, using those values, I can disable here and this button. Let's copy this. And paste here. I'll say disable if current user is blocked or is receiver blocked. I can do the same thing for my input here. Let's give a class name. For the send button, I will say if it's disabled, make this a little bit softer like that, and the cursor will be not allowed. I will do the same thing for my input, but of course we are not going to have any background. I will refresh, choose my item here. I will block user. As you can see, user blocked, and we cannot write anything. Let's change this placeholder. If they are blocked, right here, you cannot send a message. If not, type a message. Just like that. Let's check the other user. Okay, we can see the image and the username, but if I click here, as you can see, it's not here anymore because we are blocked and we cannot send any message. So let's open up the chat list, and here I'm going to write a condition. I will say if chat user blocked includes our user ID, current user ID, we are going to write here user, if not the username. Again, for this avatar, if we are blocked, we are going to show avatar.png. If not, it's going to show the user avatar. And if it doesn't exist, again, it's going to show our PNG. Just like that. Okay. The last thing we can do, we can search for any user here. To do that, I can create here one more use state. It's going to be our text, input text. Let's say input, set input. And whenever we write anything inside this input, I'm going to update my state. Let's say on change. Take the event and update our input, event, target, and value. And after that, we can filter our chats. Let's write it here. Const filtered chats. Chats.filter get each chat and check their usernames. User.username, I'll say to lowercase, and it's gonna include our input. Again, let's say to lowercase. Right now, instead of chats, we can use filtered chats. Just like that. Of course, includes, not include. Okay. If I write anything here, as you can see, it's not here. But if I say John, it's gonna be here. Okay, it works. So this is our application. Of course, we can add some more features. We can show some more details or those images. But if you understood this tutorial, it's gonna be really easy for you. If you have any problem or error, you can check the GitHub repository. I will try to update. Okay, right now we can deploy our application. To do that, I'm going to open up my Hostinger panel. As you can see, this is the IP address of our server. So if you have any domain, don't forget to redirect that domain to this IP address. And after doing that, let's click here and access our cloud panel. This panel is really easy to use. You can add all your applications and websites using this panel. Let's add a site. As you can see, you don't have to install anything from scratch. You don't have to make any Nginx configuration. You can directly create a Node.js app using this button. I'm going to add here my domain name, chat.lamadev. You can add here any port number. It doesn't matter. And this is our site user. When we connect to our server, we are going to use this name. Let's create our application. Okay, it's ready. Let's click here. And right now, I'm going to install a free SSL certificate using this tab. Let's encrypt. To do that, of course, you have to make your domain configuration. As I said, you have to use your server IP address. I will create. And that's all. As you can see, we didn't even use any piece of code. Right now, you can build your application and add your files to server using File Manager. But if you make any changes on your application in the future, instead of doing this again and again, you might want to use GitHub, push your project, and whenever you make any changes, you can directly update your application on your server. So let's push our application. But before, remember, we are using an env file. Make sure that you are hiding this file using git ignore. I'm going to write it here, .env. I will save, and it's ready to push. I can terminate my server. We don't need this anymore. I will use Ctrl+C, and I will push my application to my repository. So I will say git init. If you get any error here, make sure that you removed your .git folder first, and after create again using git init. After that, I'm gonna add my folders and files, git add and dot. Let's commit. You can write here any comment. Okay, these are all the files that we are gonna push to GitHub repository. So I can add my GitHub repository here, git remote add, and my URL. This is gonna be your URL. If you don't have any branch, you can directly push it, but remember, I have the starter branch, so I'm gonna create a new one, git checkout, branch, and the branch name. So I will say completed. Let's push, git push, origin, and the branch name. Okay, right now our project is in this repository. Using our GitHub account, we can build our application on the server. So let's connect to our server. To do that, I'm gonna open up my Hostinger panel and SSH access. Using this IP address, I can connect to my VPS. To do that, we are gonna be using our local terminal. Firstly, we should create an SSH key. Let's open up our terminal. You can use any terminal you want. Let's come here. Right now I can create my key using this command. By the way, you can find all these commands in the description below. I'll enter. You can give any password here. And our key is ready. Let's copy this using this command. And don't forget, this URL should be exactly the same URL here. If I enter, it's gonna copy my SSH key. Right now, I can paste it on my Hostinger panel. I will come here and choose SSH keys. And I'm gonna add my key using this button. Let's give any name. and I'm gonna paste it here. Like that. Let's add. It's gonna take a while, and after that we are ready to connect to our VPS. Okay, it's ready. Let's remember our address. I'm gonna copy this. That's clear. And I'll say SSH root and my IP address. I'll say yes. And we are connected. Remember, we created here our site. We are gonna find this folder and upload our files. So I will say sudo su llama chat. Let's see what's inside. Okay, let's get back to the main folder. cd hd docs. Let's see. Okay, our site is here. Let's open up. Right now I'm gonna install my files using Git. Let's check if we have Git or not. Okay, we have. We can see the version using this command. So as you can see, everything is ready to use. We don't have to install anything. I can directly upload my files using Git. I'll say git clone. I'm gonna clone my branch. So I will say single branch. Again, if you don't have any branch, you can directly paste your URL. I'm gonna use my completed branch. I will paste my URL. I will install everything here. So I will say dot and enter. Let's see. Okay, all our files and folders are here. Right now I can install my libraries. npm install. As you can see, npm is ready to use. We don't have to install. Okay, if you remember, we don't have our env file. Let's create nano.env. Let's paste our API key, and I'm gonna save this using Ctrl X. I'll say Y and enter. Let's see. Okay, our libraries are here. Let's check again our env file. Okay, it's here. So we are ready to build our application. To do that, I will write npm run and build. Right now we can serve our application. To do that, I'm gonna install serve npm2. So using those libraries, we can serve our application. But before, let's check our folders. And as you can see, after building our app, we have this folder here. And that includes all our images, JavaScript and CSS files and index.html. Right now, I'm gonna serve my application using this folder. To do that, I will say pm2 serve and the folder name. And right now, our application runs on port number 8080. If you remember, when we created our application here, we set a port number. So it should be exactly the same number. Let's see our website right now. I'll say chat.lamadev. And our application is here. Let's log in. And perfect. Let's test from website. And it works. Our message is here. We can block this user. Log out. Let's log in again as John. And the color is blue because we didn't read the message, but if I click, we can see our message here. And if you check your connection, you are gonna see that you have an SSL certificate. So creating Node.js applications are that easy, guys. If you make any changes, just push it to your GitHub repository and build your application using your server. This is the easiest and the cheapest way to deploy your applications. Okay. So we finished our project. I hope you liked it. If you learned something new today, please like the video. You can support Lama Dev by using the link in the description below or by joining the channel. Don't forget to follow Lama Dev's social media accounts. I hope I'll see you in the next tutorial. Goodbye.